Now I'm going to show you how to make a brand new way to braid wire. And what I did here, I already pre-cut 4 different pieces of wire that are double the size of my wrist. And I'm going to just go ahead and attach them to my nail, and you can also use tape for this method if you have a self-healing mat. It won't work well for wood, I tried it. So I'm just going to go ahead and loop these guys around the wire, around the nail. And of course, as always, I want you guys to have a little bit of slack because we are not going to be using this part for our bracelet. So a little bit more is always good. Divide your wire into 2 sections. So that's 2 pieces of wire on each. And then we're just going to braid them over just like we've done with our ring in the second project. But because we're working with 2 wires, I'm actually going to use my pliers to help us get a really tight braid. I want to make sure that each section, the wires are pretty much lined up as close as I can get them together before I fold them over really tightly. And just twisting, just like we've done with our ring, but we're using thicker gauge wire this time, so it is a little bit more tricky. But I want you to take your time with it. You can use more sections of wire if you want to. It's going to be, a little bit more difficult to do that, but you'll get a beautiful effect. And when you're done, just go ahead and clip it off. Remember to wear your safety goggles if you want to. Woo! Just burst it off there. When you're doing something like this, you want to make sure that if anything falls on the ground, like my supplies just did, you want to vacuum them up quickly so you don't prick your fingers or hands when you're looking for it later. It's not going to be fun. Through the magic of the internet, I have created this beautiful piece, and I've already cut off the ends here, and it fits in perfectly to my wrist. So this is what your completed braided look should end up like. Just remember to take your time, and if you have to redo a section, go ahead and redo it. It's going to be worth it. So my idea for this bracelet is to actually add this part as a brace on top of it. I think it really finishes off the piece. So how are we going to attach them? It's a pretty good idea, right? We need to figure out how to do that. So I'm just going to lay it in here like a sandwich. And I'm going to look for what looks about even on both sides here. I have a little piece of tape, as you guys can see. I'm going to use that to help brace it before we really attach it on there. It's going to be our temporary brace in just a second. But first I'm going to bend our outer wire a little closer together because I really want them to be super, super flat and together looking. That's going to take just a little bit more manipulation of the wire here. Placing my tape down first, sandwiching everything on top. Give a good press. Of course, you don't have to use duct tape. You can use whatever tape you like. I'm using duct tape because I want you guys to see it and it's going to read well on camera. So far so good, right? We're on our way. This almost looks like a bracelet, but we're not quite there yet. So let's figure out how to attach these guys for real. I'm going to take out our thinner wire, our 26 gauge wire again. And as always, I'm using a different color because I want you guys to see the contrast. But if you don't want to use a different wire, you are welcome to use the same gold or whatever color you're working with. I'm taking out a generous amount of the wire. Now, remember how we attached all this wire on here and all this wired part? I'm actually going to take off a couple of this because I just don't need this much secureness now that our piece is completely together. Go ahead and snip that away. This is more just to help us finish our piece for the first step, and now that that first step is completed, we really don't need these guys. But notice I am keeping our longer edges of the outer wire. I'm not snipping them, I'm just snipping the little tiny pieces of wire off because they're actually going to be a very useful part in how we're going to finish our piece. So we want to keep those guys. So we're going to take out our round nose jewelry pliers, the smallest ones we have because this is super detailed work. As always, you are welcome to use your magnifying glass or anything else that helps you see the detail better. Don't strain your eyes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold over our edges that we originally don't need anymore, but we do need them. And I'm just going to make a really tiny U. A little hook shape here. I'm also doing this on the side that is not going to be touching my skin because we're going to wire them down anyway and you won't see the seams. But just in case if something slips, we don't want our hands to get scratched. So I'm working how we would normally reverse with our edges. I'm trying to make my holes symmetrical on both sides, so this may take you a couple of tries. See, I'm redoing mine, and that's okay. Since we did double loop it, it is a little bit more difficult to get both of the wire to cooperate, and if they're not cooperating, I'm just going to give them a snip. That's what you get. So now let's finish our bracelet. So what I'm doing here is I'm just feeding it through the holes that we just made with our outer wire edges. And I'm just slowly wrapping the edges together to finish it off. Really holding tightly where I want my bracelet to lay for the rest of its lifetime. Really, really cover those edges of those wires. We don't want any pokes or prods. I really don't need this much wire, but again, I was showing you guys that the more to work with, because you're not exactly sure how much you will really need, or the thickness or thinness that you think looks good for your piece until you try it out. Perfect, darling. Now we have one completed side, and I'm going to show you how to finish that up, but first we got to do the other side. This side is rounded. As you remember, we used one long piece and then we folded it in half, so we're just going to snip it. And then just repeat the process that we just did on this side. I probably will need to snip off a couple here and here, but I'm going to go ahead and just attach them first to everything, and then we can just easily take off if we need to.